Since we last talked, Michigan had seemed like it had its defensive backs coach, and then he fell out after all of this bluster on my end about what a great hire it was. And then they got another one, and this one could be just as good. We're going to talk about the hire of LaMar Morgan as the secondary coach for the Wolverines on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Monday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Got to get this microphone to stay up. Just got to prop it correctly. Anyway, so last we talked, we discussed Brian Jean-Marie supposedly coming to Ann Arbor from Tennessee. Tennessee people were even reporting it, so it seemed about as good as done. Still has not been officially announced, just like none of the other defensive coaches have been officially announced as of yet. But Stephen Adegoke was a name that we've spoken of. I personally am disappointed that he is not sticking around because that's my dude. I love Stephen Adegoke. He loves to hate on the rivals. I know that much because we've had some conversations over the years, even after he had left, I believe, saying some things about the rivalries and such. But he had agreed to come to Ann Arbor and then got I guess an offer he couldn't refuse from where he already was, the Houston Texans. Got himself maybe a nice little pay bump. We don't know really for sure. And he doesn't end up coming to Michigan after all. Which is disappointing, but they do go out and get LaMar Morgan, the defensive coordinator for Louisiana. He leaves his alma mater to come to Ann Arbor, and he is someone who he's been there for a little while, but he also has experience in the system. Looking at the Ragin Cajuns website here, a standout safety for the Ragin Cajuns from 03 to 07. Morgan returned to Lafayette after spending the 2021 season as the cornerbacks coach at Vanderbilt. In his first year back in Acadiana, I don't know how to say that, Acadiana, Morgan's defense ranked in the top half of the Sun Belt Conference in total defense, and the team recorded 15 interceptions, which ranked 14th nationally. 5 members of the defense earned Sun Belt honors, including first-team selections Zion Hill-Green, who tied the school record for most sacks. Yes, that is all good, right? I'm just checking something out of my own curiosity, and no, it's not. It was just interesting. Hill-Green, like, is he related to Nikai Hill-Green? I don't know that he is or not. Not from the same area. Nonetheless, 2021 Vanderbilt. Who was the defensive coordinator in 2021 at Vanderbilt? Well, that would be a Mr. Jesse Minter. Now, that doesn't mean he was running the same exact system, right? Like, I never really looked into that part. But nonetheless, he is someone that comes in that has that experience of working with Jesse Minter. So certainly he came highly recommended by Minter, I would imagine, as far as that's concerned. Now, as far as all-time commits, we got a 4-star into Vanderbilt, which is something, right? From Louisiana, no less, and Jadeus Richard, a safety, who was a composite guy as a 4-star. I'm pulling this up. He ended up transferring to Miami eventually, but 368 in the country. So he's someone who certainly is not the type of pull you would expect to get at a place like Vanderbilt. So, and hence he's now at Miami. But and he was still he was a 3-star as a transfer. But obviously you're not going to have the greatest recruiting rankings, but he is a young dude, obviously not too far removed from his playing days, and certainly could pay some dividends as far as being on the coaching staff, not just as a coach, but as a recruiter. Now, when I say young dude, I mean he's like a year-ish older than Mike Hart. So, and obviously has the experience of coordinating a defense, has the experience of being a safety, has the experience of coaching cornerbacks. So that's kind of everything that you want as far as that is concerned. Did a really good job. Again, going back to the bio, Morgan coached 2 of Vanderbilt's top 5 tacklers during the 2021 season, and Jalen Mahoney and Gabe Judy. Now, that's not a great thing in some ways, right? Like as far as the state of the defense, which was Jesse Minter's defense, because you don't really want your top tacklers to come from the secondary. But still, Mahoney ranked 3rd on the team with 53 tackles, 2 sacks, and 2 interceptions, while Judy ranked 5th with 50 tackles and 1 pick. So did some really good things at Vanderbilt, SEC school, and then he goes and becomes a defensive coordinator at his alma mater. So that is a great trajectory, and I think that's a great hire. Doesn't come with the NFL panache, but it's a guy that knows the college game, a guy who's worked his way up, a guy who's coached in the SEC, even if it's at the least popular SEC school, a guy who's been a defensive coordinator, and he'll be working under another defensive coordinator in Wink Martindale. So I like the hire. I think that if you weren't going to get Adegoke, he and Corey Parker at Toledo were the other 2 options I thought would probably be pretty good. So now with that in mind, the defensive staff is supposedly set. Wink Martindale, defensive coordinator, Greg Scruggs as defensive line coach, Brian Jean-Marie as linebackers coach, and LaMar Morgan as your secondary coach. I really can't get this to stay put here. So it's set. And I like that a lot. Now, if you have any concern about Wink Martindale or Greg Scruggs, have no fear, because I saw them at the basketball game on Saturday in maize and blue garb from super far away. Shout out to us at a Smile Fixer. Was it Elfith Dentisto or whatever your name is, for giving me crap online because the picture is not great, because I'm sitting in the upper bowl on the opposite side and got a picture of them walking through the crowd on literally the opposite side on the floor. But nonetheless, they were there, and that is good news for Michigan that they are in attendance, even if they haven't been announced. You have to assume that they will be before too long. So the only thing we're really truly waiting on is what happens when Mike Hart comes back from his leave of absence. And I don't know if there's anything to worry about there or not. But he is on a leave of absence, I had been told. So we are just kind of waiting on that. But everyone else seems like they're in, although there's yet to also be an announcement about Ron Bellamy. But it seems to stand to reason that he's not going anywhere as far as his retention. So the staff is set. I like the staff. I feel like it's a very good staff. And we'll see where it goes. So, all right, let's continue on. I want to talk a little bit of basketball after seeing Michigan at Michigan or against Michigan State in Chrysler Center. We'll get to that in the third segment. I do want to kind of get to some of where some of these projections, these prognostications, whether it's the Athletics top 25 or even more importantly, SP Plus. There's still a lot of real big expectations for Michigan this season, despite there not being a lot of hype for it overall. We're going to get to those topics in just a moment. But before we do, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you've got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's like dipping into your own personal transfer portal to get the team members you need to win a championship. Now, LinkedIn is not just another job board. Like Connor Stalions, LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. Connor has more than 1 billion, but still, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is super easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire, so that's why it is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. LinkedIn has just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even faster. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so I think that there are some interesting things out there as far as the national perception, right? There's a lot of people I believe, I can't remember which one. I see that Michigan tends to be kind of more middling, right? In a lot of these early projections from a lot of people, more like 13th, 14th, somewhere around there. But there's certainly, in 24/7 Sports gives them a 9.5 as the over under for the win total, for instance. There's a lot of everyone's kind of everywhere when it comes to where Michigan kind of rates overall in terms of what it will be this upcoming season. ESPN 2 early top 25, I believe, was 13. That's what it was. Which to me, I mean, that makes sense, right? I don't think it's terribly out of bounds. It's especially, that we don't know if Michigan's going to lose some people come, obviously this transfer portal, they've lost Keon Sabb. We didn't talk about that, but still, that's not ideal. But it feels like, for the most part, everyone's kind of looking at it and saying, we're going to wait and see, and we'll put Michigan right in the middle. But that's not where everyone is. Because The Athletic weighed in, I think this was actually more than a week ago, or maybe even 2 weeks ago, but I just saw it for the first time yesterday. And I thought that was worth looking at. Stewart Mandel, who a lot of you I know aren't big fans of, he had Michigan as his number 6 team in his 2 early top 25. Here's what he says. His drop-off is likely unavoidable in Sherrone Moore's first season with all the talent Michigan has lost, notably quarterback J.J. McCarthy, running back Blake Corum, and nearly the entire offensive line. Well, really, truly the entire offensive line. But running back Donovan Edwards put off the NFL. Tight end Colston Loveland returns, and young wide receivers LaMar Morgan and Tyler Morris will have bigger roles. Defensive tackles Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Pass rushers Josiah Stewart and Derek Moore. Cornerback Will Johnson and safety cornerback Will Johnson and safety Rod Moore should anchor another strong defense, but QB is a big question mark. I think that's all absolutely fair, and I think with that said, it's kind of surprising as Michigan number 6. They're behind Ohio State at number 2 and Oregon at number 4. Texas, who they play in week 2, is number 3. So certainly it's going to be a daunting challenge, but if they can figure out the quarterback situation and the offensive line gels, there's no reason to think that this can't be a pretty good scenario, right? But I am surprised because Stewart Mandel has not tended to be very much of a Michigan lover, and yet he has them in the top 6, which is, I mean, a lot of people had Michigan kind of around there last year. FPI, the Advanced Analytics, had Michigan as number 6 last year. So it's kind of interesting because I look at it both ways, right? Michigan loses a lot, but generally national champions get a lot of love, right? Sometimes it makes sense, right? Georgia is just getting a lot of love just, after the first one, then they repeated. They got even, just as much love despite losing a bunch of players and not having Stetson Bennett anymore and, all that stuff. But I think what is the most interesting part of all of this at this point is where Michigan ranks in terms of the SP Plus, which is my favorite of the advanced analytics. And in the 2 early SP Plus ranking, the preseason, pre-spring version, Bill Connolly has Michigan as the number 3, still the number 3 Big Ten school, but number 5 overall with the number 2 defense, the number 32 offense, and the number 7 special teams. I think that is incredible. So the defense, the only one that ranks ahead of Michigan, unfortunately, is Ohio State, and that kind of makes sense given what they were able to do. But return to Jim Knowles, but I still think that Michigan has that opportunity to be up there even higher. The number 1 offense belongs to Oregon, who's the number 2 team in the Big Ten, number 3 overall, according to SP Plus. And they have the number 15 defense. But at the same time, I'm curious to see what happens when they play in the Big Ten, right? Because the best team in the Pac-12 last year was Washington, and Michigan absolutely throttled them score-wise, ultimately. And so it'll be interesting to see if anything like that occurs. Obviously, also, Oregon beat Ohio State and Columbus in 2021. So it's not saying they can't beat Big Ten teams, but it's because they certainly are capable. But I still think it's really interesting to see that Michigan's kind of hovering around that 5 or 6, and according to certain people and certain metrics. It's going to be a little early to obviously tell. We have no idea who the quarterback's going to be, if they have wide receivers to throw to outside of the 2 that Stewart Mandel mentioned. And like I said in the last episode, I really want to see them to go get like one of those tall possession receivers, unless, I guess if Frederick Moore takes a big step forward and some of those other guys that are a little bit more diminutive, Carmelo English, and then you got the freshman, Amarian Stewart and Channing Goodwin, maybe that they feel good about what they've got. I would like to see a little more talent in the wide receiver room, as I've said before. But defensively, it should carry them. And I mean, if Michigan's got the number 32 offense, I don't see much wrong with that, especially I'm not looking at the advanced metrics. I'm just looking at the total offense. Michigan, as far as yards per last year, was not a top offense, right? I mean, it didn't need to be. I don't know if I can look at this as yards per play. That would probably be the better way to go. Let's look at yards per play rather than total yards. And where is Michigan? 35th. So kind of right around there. As far as scoring offense, Michigan was a little bit higher, 14th. And I don't have the points per play, which is a good metric to look at. But nonetheless, if Michigan can find a way to, they still should be able to bully people up front and things of that nature. So I think that there's still a really good chance that Michigan could be really good this next year. But obviously, we wait and see to what happens spring, April 20th, spring game. That's when we're really going to have a pretty good idea of what the offense is. But if they can retain who they have defensively, it's a really good shot for these Wolverines to at least contend with the Texas, Oregons, and Ohio States. Now, after the last 3 years, you want to do more than contend, but I think when you have the player turnover, the coaching turnover, new head coach, all that stuff, I mean, just get yourself in the conversation, especially with an expanded playoff. Beat Ohio State at all costs, but I mean, that's going to be easier said than done. They've gone all in, but I still think they went all in with a lot of the wrong pieces in order to take down a Michigan team that's owned them the last 3 years. We'll see, right? I'm not saying that, Michigan will win. I'm not saying that Ohio State will win. My prediction in my too early game-by-game prediction had Ohio State winning, just when I look at what they have on paper and compared to what Michigan has. And I know that's going to upset a lot of people. That's just, I'm trying to be objective about it. Anyway, speaking of objective, before we move on, I do want to have a quick note because I was just looking at my site at Wolverines Wire. Because I see this every time. Now, if you were watching the Michigan State basketball game, then you saw Gus Johnson getting his bag of goodies of Michigan championship stuff. And I still saw, so I wrote a little article about it because I wanted people out there who, maybe haven't heard me say this on the show or who don't think otherwise, that for whatever reason, just because Gus Johnson says the world famous Ohio State Buckeyes, that means that he's a Ohio State fan, and he couldn't be further from the truth. He has told me directly multiple times. We'll have him on the show at some point because I've talked to Gus about coming on the show. But I haven't texted him yet to ask him, hey, let's lock that down. But nonetheless, he is a Michigan fan. His dog's name is Bo, named after Bo Schembechler. When he talks about Michigan, he refers to Michigan as we. He's told me that the people in Columbus, as far as the coaching staff, know he's a Michigan fan and give him all kinds of crap about it. And the whole world famous thing is strictly a reference to Jesse Owens. So, he wears turnover buffs. I don't know how to spell it out for you more. He's a Michigan fan. You might not like him for whatever reason, but he is a Michigan fan. He's from Detroit. He grew up a Michigan fan. He's still a Michigan fan. He's given me hugs after he gave me a hug after Michigan won the Big Ten championship this year. He was super excited. He's like going back to the playoff, going to the Rose Bowl. I just want to clarify that for all the people who want to hate on Gus for these reasons. But anyway, let's talk a little basketball. We haven't done that much. There's been really no reason to, but we'll tie in the Ward Manual comments about Juwan Howard. We'll do all of that here in just a moment. But before we do, get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right. It's $150 if your bet wins. So, just choose wisely. You get $150. Bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and a heck of a lot more. I haven't done the NBA, but I was having some fun with the NFL, which I don't watch the NFL. Why? But I took a $5 bet and turned it into $67 and then went nuts in blackjack, and for good and then for worse in the FanDuel app. There's all kinds of things you can do in there. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, so let's continue on. Still am laughing at this Gus Johnson stuff, just because I was commenting back on some Michigan Facebook groups I've been added to, and there's people. He's bandwagon. He's not a bandwagon. He's been a Michigan fan probably longer than that person said, or there's just different things that people say, like, oh, he's not. He says world famous Ohio State Buckeyes. Listen, did you expect him to go out there and say negative things about Ohio State on the air as a national, like the main national dude for college sports? Not going to do that. All right. So Michigan basketball, last two games I've been to, Rutgers and Michigan State. Michigan decides that it can't score in like the latter half of the second half, and lets the other team go on a run. Now, it wasn't as emphatic as the Rutgers game, an 18-2 run to finish the game for Rutgers. But this was a, 10-0 run or something like that. And Michigan just imploded. I don't really understand. I understand that some parts of it, right? There's no depth, not really a go-to guy that go out there and get buckets. They still were going to the foul line here and there, and it didn't always work. Turnovers, 22 turnovers in that game is just disgusting. Every time it felt like Michigan was taking control of the game, Doug McDaniel, who obviously is playing very sporadically due to his academic status, just loved to throw the ball, pass the ball right to a Michigan State guy. To me, a lot of times it was like, hey, dude, just slow it down. Just absolutely slow down. This is getting ridiculous. But, it's like the Michigan basketball program in general. It's absolutely ridiculous at this moment. It's hard to even want to go to a game. I have a hard time wanting to go to games in general because I just don't love college basketball the way maybe some others do. I like it in March when Michigan's good, but trekking to Chrysler when it's, 15 degrees out, no, don't love it. For regular season games that you would expect would be enough to get you into the tournament. But this team is just absolutely abysmal to watch because they're going to play really good for at least a half. In this last game, they played really good for, 3/4-ish of the game, good enough to win, and then just stop, right? They can't make stops on defense. All the blow-bys. Right. It was kind of embarrassing being at Chrysler because the go green, go white chants were drowning out anything else. But it's understandable given that there's not much for Michigan fans to be excited about at the moment. And it doesn't help when we were on that conference call with talking about Altius and Learfield coming into agreement with Michigan for NIL stuff, that afterwards Ward Manuel says, Juwan and I have talked, yes, and we'll continue to have those conversations as the season goes through, and I continue to support him in an effort to turn this around and win like he expects to. There's no lack of effort from our Stewart student athletes or coaches, and it's a lack of execution at times, and we have to be better. He knows that. They know that they know that, and expectations are high, but I will continue to have conversations with him. We'll continue to support him in our program and continue to be there for him. Blah, 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 blah. Then he continued and said, it would be fair to say I've not really thought about any changes in our men's basketball program at this time. It's one of those things that I guess I can't say it any clearer. I want to support Juwan to be successful, and I've not given any moment or thought to anything about changes at this time. And so my support is of him, of our student athletes and our staff. Now, that could all just be athletic director speak, right? Like, they're not going to fire a favored son in the middle of the season, right? Chris Holtmann got fired by Ohio State. He's not a former Ohio State legend like Juwan Howard is at Michigan. So he very well could have thought of it and is just saying that to like, hey, we're going to support you until the season's done and then bye-bye. But I don't believe that Juwan, and I say this with a heavy heart because I love Juwan as a guy and I love what he did in his early tenure at Michigan. But to me, you just can't do what you're doing right now. Last place in the Big Ten really doesn't look like it's going to get double-digit wins this year. Just absolute dumpster fire. Yeah, I've got a win against Ohio State and a surprising win against the then-ranked Wisconsin. It's shocking. But you know what's going to happen when they play Purdue next week, or later this week, whatever. You know it's probably going to happen when they play Ohio State again, this time in Columbus. It's not pretty at the moment. It's about as abysmal as possible. Now, one thing that my best friend and I have always talked about is we would let Michigan basketball be winless in exchange for a football national championship. Well, there it is. But at the same time, I mean, you got to do something about it because it's in a terrible spot. I don't know that he has any of the solutions. The roster management is absolutely absurd. Who knows what's going on with John Sanderson? It's an absolutely abysmal state at the moment. And you've got to do something about it. So those are my thoughts. And unfortunately, I hope to be wrong. And in the sense of, it'd be nice if they rebounded. All of a sudden the answers become clear. Juwan can turn it around because I don't want him to go. But if you can't lose and lose the way they're losing and expect to keep your job, that's unfortunately where I stand with it. So that's for all the people who want to say I'm just going to be a Michigan homer about everything. Keep in mind, I can be wrong. I was in full support of Jim Harbaugh losing his job after 2020. But that was more because he had an unwillingness to get rid of Don Brown, which I thought should have happened after 2018 Ohio State game. I thought the ramifications of losing that way to Ohio State were big enough. Despite that being the only time that Don Brown really faltered, it was big enough to be like, bro, you cannot falter like that in that game with everything on the line. Kept him around for 2 more years. Once he got rid of him, everything went on the up and up. All right. So that is going to do it for today's episode. We will tackle more current events as the week unfolds, but that's going to do it for this. So thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again soon. Peace.